Hey friends! My name is Desiree, aka Mama Friendly, and I do all sorts of videos on my channel. Cooking videos, vlogs, hauls, Disney content, VLOGMAS, a little bit of everything. So if any of that sounds like fun to you, I hope that you'll subscribe and join me on my YouTube adventure. VLOGMAS is starting to wind down, and as a result, so is my 12 Days of Cookies series. But we're not done yet. And in fact, this installment is particularly special because I'm making a collaboration where a bunch of my friends are joining me today, and they're also going to be sharing their favorite holiday cookie recipes. So once you finished watching my video, please make sure to check out the description box. I'm going to put a link to the playlist where all of my friends' videos are going to be featured so you can see what everybody else made today as well. The cookies I'm making today are going to be a little bit different because I'm going to actually be making cookie bars rather than traditional like cookie shapes. And the cookie that I am choosing to make is a gluten-free Cranberry Bliss bar. Sort of similar to the type you find at Starbucks, but this is going to be allergy friendly. It's going to be both gluten-free and dairy-free. If dairy-free is not a concern for you, then feel free to use regular chocolate chips, regular cream cheese, regular butter, etc. But I'm going to be making this as allergy friendly as I can, and so with that being said, let's go ahead and show you the ingredients I'm working with today. First things first, we're going to need a cup of butter melted, or 226 grams. I personally prefer when a recipe has measurements in grams as opposed to just like an actual cup or tablespoon or what have you. So I'm probably going to be erring on the side of measuring in grams by weight. So 226 grams or a cup melted, 1.5 cups or 300 grams of packed brown sugar, and I'm really hoping I have enough today. 2 large eggs at room temperature, so I've had these out on the counter for about an hour before starting. The zest of 1 large orange. I've got these halos or cuties or whatever they're called, so I'm going to be using this because it's what I have on hand. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Switching out my pumpkin pie spice because I just realized I don't need pumpkin pie spice. I actually just need a 1/2 teaspoon of ground ginger, so we're using that. A teaspoon of baking powder. 1 3/4 cup or 245 grams of all-purpose 1-to-1 gluten-free flour, so I'm using Bob's Red Mill, it's what I always use. 170 grams or 1 cup of white chocolate chips, and I'm using the Enjoy Life brand because they are allergy friendly. And lastly, 3/4 cup or 90 grams of dried cranberries. Now this is just for the bars. Once the bars are done, I'm going to be showing you a different set of ingredients and a different recipe to make the cream cheese topping that we're going to be putting on the cookies. So just to kind of start things off, I'm going to do my mise en place, if you will, my prep for the recipe. So for me, that involves measuring and melting my butter. I'm going to weigh out my sugar. I'm going to zest my oranges, and then I'll meet you guys back here. In the meantime, I'm going to have my oven preheating to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm also going to prep a 9 by 13 baking dish. I'm going to put some parchment paper in it with a little bit of overhang so that once they're done baking, I can just lift the whole thing out of the pan and not worry about anything sticking. My scale out. I've got 300 grams of brown sugar in here. I actually had plenty. I thought I wouldn't have enough, but I have plenty. So I'm putting that in a bowl, and to that I'm going to add my melted butter. Whoop! That ended up being the full like bar of Miyoko's plant-based butter because I believe it's like a double-sized bar. But you're gonna need 8 ounces or that equivalent of butter for your recipe. I'm just going to beat this together until it's well combined. You can use a hand mixer, you can use a stand mixer. I'm just going to use a fork. If the butter were not melted, I'd probably have a harder time at this. And so in that case, I might opt for some electronic help. But since it is melted, this is pretty easy to do by hand. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that rather than dirty more stuff. Now to that, I'm going to add in my eggs. Remember, these are room temperature because you don't want the temperature of the eggs to re-solidify your butter and throw the texture off of the whole recipe. I'm going to go ahead and add in my vanilla now as well. Thereabouts. And lastly, we're going to try our best here to get some zest from these oranges. Don't really quite have a zester per se, so I'm kind of struggling here. I did my best with the tools I've got. Note to self, ask Santa for a zester. It just seems silly to do that because I zest things so infrequently that it seems kind of nuts to spend money on a tool that I'm never going to use. You know what Alton Brown says about single-use tools? You really can't do much with a zester but zest, I think. But then again, situations like this, I can't deny it'd be pretty handy to have. Alright, that's gonna have to be enough. I'm gonna mix that together now. If you get a really big chunk of orange zest in your cookie bar, no you didn't. It smells lovely though, I'm not gonna lie. Next thing I want to do is add in my dry ingredients. I'm going to break out my scale again. I typically would not recommend you do this because if you over add flour, it's going to be very hard to get it out. So I would actually suggest that you measure the flour separately and then put it in here. Do as I say, not as I do, because I'm putting it straight into the bowl. And we needed 245 grams of that, or 1 3/4 cup. I'm going to finish off this bag that I already have open. And then start on this new bag. Waste not, want not. And I went just slightly too far, but I have enough of a little mound going on here that I could just kind of whoop. That's perfect. Ideal, actually. So there's my 245 grams of flour. Gonna add in my ginger next. And I'm just eyeballing it, but you want a 1/4 teaspoon. 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and I am going to measure this because this is going to result in the lift of our cookies. And if we put too little, we won't achieve that lift. If we put too much, all we're going to taste is chemical. And we don't want that. So I'm going to measure out 1 teaspoon exactly. Boom. And lastly, our salt. I'm going to gently give that a mix. Make sure if you're using a stand mixer or a hand mixer, let me get rid of the scale, that you start this slowly, because if you go in here full speed ahead, you're going to just create a cloud of flour all over your kitchen, all over yourself. Not a fun time. You don't want to overmix this either. So I'm trying to do a little bit of like a folding / mixing technique. So I'm bringing all the dry stuff into the middle and then mixing till just incorporate. I brought my scale back out because I didn't realize I needed to keep measuring, but obviously, because we're not done with the bars yet, we need to add in our white chocolate chips, and that was 1 cup or 170 grams. Once again, you should probably measure this outside your actual mixing bowl, but we're living on the edge today. So plus a little extra white chocolate chips never really hurt anybody. But that's exactly 170, and I'm happy with that. So 170 grams. And lastly, our dried cranberries. We need 90 grams of these, so I'm going to zero out my scale. And here we go. Perfect, and we even have some left over to use as garnish on top of the bars later. One last mixy mix, and this is going to be ready to bake. I'm going to spread this out into the corners. Try to make everything as even as possible. Smooth out the top some. Now this is going to go into our 350-degree oven for 20 to 22 minutes, or until the edges are golden brown. And I want them to cool completely before frosting. However, for the frosting, I do need softened cream cheese. So once this goes into the oven, I am going to bring the cream cheese out and leave it sitting on the counter or on the stove while everything bakes and cools. So that way the frosting, or the cream cheese rather, is ready for us to make the frosting later. So for our frosting / topping, we're going to need 8 ounces or 226 grams of softened cream cheese. I've actually got Kite Hill plain cream cheese here, and it's already softened-ish, so I might not leave it out for the whole hour. I might just take it out, I don't know, 20 minutes before I'm getting ready to start the frosting, because I'm going to let the cookie bars bake, obviously for their 22 minutes or however long it takes, but I want to give them a full hour to cool before I try frosting them. Otherwise, if they're still warm, the frosting will just kind of seep into the cookie bar and you won't get those 2 layers, right? So we need the cream cheese, 1/2 cup or 85 grams of white chocolate chips melted, and divided, because some of it's going to be mixed into the frosting and some of it's going to be drizzled on top if you have any left over. I'm going to use what's left in the bag, so we'll see what happens there. We also need 1.5 cups or 187 grams of powdered sugar, not shown because I have to go look for it in the pantry, but it exists, I promise. We need the zest of half an orange, we'll see about that. And we also need a half teaspoon of vanilla extract. I've only got a tiny bit of cranberries left, so I'm thinking I might chop them up and sprinkle them over the top of the bars once they're done. So this is completely optional, but I have them and I don't have any other plans for what's left of the bag, so I figure I, whoops, might as well. Alright pals, my bars have been cooling for about an hour now. And I've got a very large bowl here. You do not need a bowl anywhere near this big, but this is what I have clean, so it's what I'm using. And I am going to use this to make my frosting slash topping. So I'm going to weigh out, first of all, my 187 grams, or 1.5 cups, whatever you're doing, of powdered sugar right into the bowl. Oh my goodness. I got enough. I had enough and then some, and also my black shirt is no longer black. But the nice thing is that this is the only thing in the bowl, so I can very easily just scoop out what I don't need. And it's business as usual. I could movie magic myself into a clean shirt later, but nah. It's more authentic if I show you guys the full mess I just made. Into the sugar, I'm going to go ahead and throw in my 8 ounces of softened cream cheese, which you just ASMR'd me opening. And now for this, just to make my life easier, I am going to go ahead and use my hand mixer. You don't have to use a hand mixer or a stand mixer. You could just do this by hand. But I'm on a little bit of a time crunch right now, so I'm going to go ahead and take the fast route. I'm going to beat this together until it is smooth. That's some cream cheese frosting if I ever saw it, but we're not done yet. I move my scale one last time. I've got my melted white chocolate here. I had barely enough for the actual frosting, so unfortunately I am not going to get to drizzle any white chocolate on top of the bars as decoration. But I do have those cranberries, so they're not going to go without decor at all. And this way I can make sure to give the full white chocolate flavor punch to the frosting where I feel it's more needed. So there's all of our white chocolate. I'm going to put in my vanilla extract now. I was half a teaspoon supposedly, but you know, I'm just going to eyeball it. That's fine. And lastly, if you're able to secure the zest of another half an orange, by all means add it in. I'm leaving it out because it's not worth the trouble for me, seeing as I don't have a zester in my life. Just snuck a little taste, and that is remarkable, if I do say so myself. I went and took the bars out of their pan so that they could cool, but I think I'm actually going to pull the pan back out and put them back in if I can manage it, because before I slice them, oh, they're already starting to crack. That's okay. You guys know I don't mind a rustic look. I'm going to refrigerate them for a little bit to help make the cuts a little more clean. Again, it's already started to crack, so this might be a moot point. But we're going to try our best all the same. So we're going to put all of the frosting onto the bars. So there goes all the frosting onto the bars. We're going to spread it all out so that everybody's nice and covered. It feels like a lot of frosting for this amount of bars, but that's fine. I don't mind. I'm typically not a frosting person for most things, but when it comes to a cream cheese frosting, I will absolutely make an exception. Comment below if you agree, or if you're just a frosting is great all the time kind of person. And lastly, I'm going to take those little bits of cranberry that I've got left, and I'm just going to toss them about. Try to spread them out some so that every part has a little something. Oh, that's just a big old clump of cranberry there. Perfect. It adds to the festiveness of it all, and I'm not wasting any cranberries. So I'm going to go ahead and throw these into the fridge, and we'll cut them up in, I don't know, let's say another hour. Alright pals, the time has come to slice our cookie bars. Now we're meant to get 24 bars out of this. I don't know if I dare try to cut all 24 right now, I'm gonna kind of roughly, I know that this is meant to yield 12 then. So I'm gonna do 4 slices maybe. Well, looking more like 3. No, we can do 4. And then 3 across. And that'll give us our 12 little tiny cookie slices. I mean, they're not tiny, they're proper cookie sized. Grab a corner piece because it feels like it'll probably be the easiest thing to do. The texture's giving brownie, which I'm not surprised by considering how we baked them, but let's go ahead and give it a taste. It's absolutely giving brownie in the best possible way. The cream cheese frosting is dominant, but you're still getting some of the ginger. You can definitely taste the brown sugar. The cranberries are there. Overall, this works together really, really well. A little messy, but I definitely think it's worth it. Guys, these bars are so flippin' good. I feel like they could use a tiny bit more of a bake. Something that I have to keep in mind that I hope you'll consider as well is that the pan is supposed to be a 9x13 pan, and I don't own one. I used an 8x11. So mine are a little thicker than they're supposed to be, and I feel like that probably affected the bake and the baking time. So you will probably come out with a thinner cookie bar with a different texture slightly, and that's okay because like I said, these came out a little fudgier maybe than I would have wanted them to, but they're delicious. And now I know for next time to kind of adjust accordingly, maybe get a properly sized pan. But they're absolutely delicious. I really hope that you'll try them, and if you do, I hope you'll come back and let me know how much you like them. And now that you've finished watching my recipe with my sugary shirt, I hope that you'll check out that playlist and see what all my friends made for their holiday cookie collab as well. Thank you guys so much for being here. Remember to stay tuned, subscribe, hit the notification bell because Vlogmas continues and I wouldn't want you to miss a minute. Thanks so much again for watching. Bye!